Hail and well met friends. Welcome to A Dragon's Voice. I'm your host, Ruan Hayden. Who are the Andedion that I constantly refer to? What about the King and Queen of Fairy? Today we will touch upon these important and powerful beings that lie at the heart of the ancient fairy faith as I practice it. But first, the news. In this section, I would normally put, something that's going on out in our world today. But due to things that are going on in my own personal life, I have news to present to my audience. As of today, Tuesday, I will be gainfully employed once again in the mundane scene. Now, what this means is that things in my business, my Patreon patrons, my tarot readings, my videos, they will be getting switched up time-wise and dates. But my business is still flourishing. I'm still here to take tarot readings. I'm still here to do everything that I have been doing. But this also means my availability is, of course, going to be changing. I am, however, in the middle of a few very, very awesome projects. For one thing, I have been given permission and have been in talks with Robin Artson, a prolific, very faithful, who has written so many books, including Witching Way of the Hollow Hill, Meadows of Elfhame, The Flaming Circle, and more recently, Letters from the Devil's Forest, and Carl Gwyn, The Ancient Fairy Faith and Sorcery, and Caron Rude, a companion to Carl Gwyn. And I am going to be doing the audiobook version of Ankaro Gwyn, and I am currently working on that as well. Another thing is that things in my Patreon are going to be shaken up and solidified, and including in that is we will soon be presenting our own subscription boxes, which will have variety of very awesome witchy things, including my own set of mugwort crystals. I'm making breaching charms that can be used as a travel altar, so to speak. And so we've got that and a lot of other things going on, including little mini wands that I'm going to be making. So I'm excited for that, and I can't wait to get going on that. So we've got that going on. But let's move to the lore of the Andedion. Who are the Andedion? Who and what are they? And why is it important to build friendships with these powerful entities? In my rituals, I always begin with a call to the sacred powers by saying, Andedion we diumi. In 1971, in Chamaliers, France, I probably butchered that name too, a lead tablet was discovered during an excavation at Source des Rochers. The estimated date in which it was carbon dated to was somewhere between 50 BC and 50 AD. The text, written in the Gaulish language in cursive Latin letters, is the longest text found, consisting of 47 words. The text invokes the deity Maponus, but it is the opening words which states, Andedion we diumi. There have been many attempts to translate this phrase, but the simplest translation seems to mean, I invoke or pray to the underworld gods. It may sound sinister, but this is because we no longer understand just who and what these UnGods are. In my understanding, these UnGods, these spirits, who are seen as not the gods, are the primordial and original spirits which gave rise, through fateful encounter, those beings which eventually became social cults, and thus gods by which the people worshipped. There's an etymological connection between the Andedion and the Unworld, known among the Kimri as Anun. It is not hard to identify the Gaulish Andedion and their Irish counterparts with the Dail Anun, the demons of Anun, as referred to in the story of Culhwch al Olwen, where they are described as being confined within the person of Gwyn ap Neith, lest this world be destroyed. Anciently, they represented the benign forces of growth and fertility inherent in the land, and usually locally, indwelling the very lands in which they are experienced. One such grouping of the Andedion among the culture of the Norse are the Vanir, gods which, in the tales, warred with a group of gods called the Aesir. The Vanir lost, probably because the people were either bred out or murdered, or that they needed to be assimilated into the new culture that has come in and supplanted them. This is remembered to us now as the War of the Aesir and the Vanir, leaving them, the Vanir, as minor domestic deities, such as Freyr and Njord, as hostages. When we study mythology and the folklore, we have to realize that which has been written and passed down to us comes down in filters of various sources, and usually by the winners. They all have a basis in fact, though. Something created the legends themselves, a real experience. Someone met and interacted with these entities. At the source of the stories, there is a real entity, a real spirit, and interacted with the human race, and its tale was held for posterity. And why is this really? Because theirs was a mutual relationship, a pact, a covenant. These were the ancient harmonies of which I speak, the ancient fairy faith, an organic and non-Abrahamic spread, adaptation, and change. It is a domestic cult and never can be turned into an established and hierarchical, patristic, and misogynistic organization. And these entities indwell the very land, sea, and sky around us. Now, I don't want to be accused of cultural appropriation, but getting to know the spirits of the land around you, and you will come to know the Andedion by doing such, and see real world results. As an American with Welsh ancestry and spiritual focus, it can be very difficult when building relationships with the sacred dead and other than human entities that already have relationships with the indigenous peoples of this beautiful land I live in. We need to make sure that we aren't appropriating their covenants with their attendant rights and claiming it for ourselves. But we do dwell here and can and should seek individual relationships with those who dwell around you. For this is how you make your own covenants, and they will gift you a name by which you could call them, without appropriating someone else's. This is because it is domestic. True animism in its finest. So, who are the Andedion, the not gods? They are the spirits. They are the various communities of life. And since they indwell the land, they are underworldly. For life, for us, begins in the fire at the center of the earth, the waters which surrounds the land, and ends in the end of our atmosphere. And they are the host of the Ladian Lord, the land indweller and the air indweller. And when and if we inhabit another planet, we will meet in our various ways the indwellers of those planets, if we don't end ourselves. The King of Spirits and his Queen are not only the Lord and Lady of the other world, and manifest in dreams and visions, but within the physical interactions, for within them are all spirits, including our own, equal with the others, not over any other. We have created heavy debts due to our unwise ways, to the hosts in our local areas, but also to the very mother and father of us all. The ancient harmonies say that it is a jungle out there, and not in a negative way, but that there are indeed predatory entities, just as there are the prey. And every species and entity has its own food chain. But for every life you take, takes a portion of you, and eventually you will die. And some of these entities are metaphysically stronger in many ways than ourselves. The spirit of the cancer cells in your body, a natural thing, and not some payment for sins. And when we have miracles, it is because of stronger allies within your body and outside your body, whether it comes from pharmaceuticals or the sickness entity has lost its oomph. Is it sad and heart-wrenching? Absolutely. And this is natural. It is natural to grieve, for we ourselves suffer soul loss from horrible things. Because we are all interconnected in relationship to all other things. A great weave or music. What happens to one entity will indeed affect every other entity in so many ways. So, I'm not being heartless, for as a healer myself, it is my oath to do everything in my power, even calling on my own allies and friends unseen, to do my best to heal all those who I come across. But remember, as with anything, there is an equilibrium, and everything has a cost. And when you are asking the unseen for something, you have to give something up. This is called a transfer of vitality. When we build these relationships, seeking the queen and king, we call upon the world indweller and the land indweller. And it is through their servitors, those portions of themselves that will interact with us. When we receive a familiar spirit, that is a relationship that you build. Giving offerings to them helps to feed them. And the strongest relationship, with honor and respect, can also be petitioned for help, but they may ask something in return. The rituals we do, our part of the ancient harmonies, transfers vitality or power between the seen and unseen. And what happens in one will affect what happens in the other. In our history, we know in our deepest gut the respect that our ancestors had before unwisdom pervaded with these spirits. They gifted the first fruits of their harvest and gave the best part of game to their spirits, which many later became called gods. They gave offerings on behalf of what they took for their own survival and did not take more than they needed. But as more and more people began to settle closer and closer together, that the need for civilization was that they began to develop surplus owned by the few and enforced by a new phenomenon, the warrior class. These are the people that needed to manipulate the masses in order to enforce their supremacy. They took the legends of otherworldly encounters and created a political spin. They needed to convince the populace that they were chosen to lead, no longer by the people, but by the spirits themselves. In the Vedas, that talk about the relationship of the caste, the Brahmins, the Kshatriyas, and so forth, established by the now gods themselves. The Brahmins spoke for the gods and upheld the rulers, and enforced by the warriors to lord over the farmers and herders. And all of these men. As we study the myths and legends and stories, we can see, if we have a critical eye, the threads of what our ancestors were really trying to pass down to us. Real, individual stories of interactions with powerful entities of the formerly human and other than human types. Now that we have a rudimentary understanding of who the Andedion are, how do we build relationships with them? Honestly, we are never alone. We have never been alone. They have always been here, and they will always be here, resident in our world, not in some place of punishment or some heavenly paradise, but here, now. And they are watching and sensing and interacting with us at all times, just as the hosts of demons are resident within Gwyn ap Neath as the king of Faerie. We are all things, we, as well as all things, are birthed by the Queen of Faerie, sometimes known as Cridalad, sometimes as Guinevere, Windo Sabara. These two persons contain within them all of us. This can be seen in the light between the horns, the gifting of Prometheus, giving us fire. That fire is not only the harnessing of the element of fire, but the vitality of life itself. And when we die, that vitality is returned to the Great Queen, just as surely as our bodies are. And the wind of our bodies, which gives us life in this world, returns to Gwyn ap Neath as the wind indweller. We are always interacting. But how do we build trust and friendship with those in the other world? The world we cannot see, feel, touch, taste, or smell. Those who are not embodied in a tangible way for ourselves. We reach out to them in the only ways we know how, by gifting them that which they gift us with, in reverence and respect. By realizing that, just as any other form of life must take from another, that we ourselves take from other forms of life. In a real way, give respect to those fish that you catch and eat, or your other foodstuffs, by not wasting nor failing to give back what you do not use, and to give the first fruits, the best part to those you took it from. These are the ancient harmonies. Those field rituals of John Barleycorn is a remembrance of a real person who manifests in the phenomenon of agriculture, a gift given to us by them. To me, he is Lula Gifes, one of the House of Dawn, who was killed in the harvest as grain. Killed by his wife Blodweth, who fell in love with Gronwy Pebber, who is nothing other than the seed. Blodweth is a manifestation of the vitalizing spirit that gives life and takes life as she will. She was created by Mathat Mathonwy, a manifestation of fateful force, and Gwydion, who is likened, among the House of Dawn, to the sun itself, as it is recorded, for that has become a story of patriarchy. She is agriculture, and was usurped by males. You can liken her to Demeter. It is only in a specific season that she chooses to have Gronwy kill Thlu, in the only way that can kill him. In this story, we see the thread of true wisdom, a folklore which has gone mainstream. We see the mechanics of agriculture passed on in story, so that it will never be forgotten. In the fairy tradition, we have the establishment of what we call an elf cup. After many successful offerings, I began to notice a practice that our ancestors passed to us, but that we have divorced the spiritual from: the use of compost piles. Composting, in our understanding now, is a modern practice. We take the last bit of food that cannot be eaten, and we give it to the ground. And the worms and bugs and other entities then turn that into new soil. We are giving a portion of the vitality that we took and giving it back. if we add a spiritual understanding of it, we indeed make it sacred. And the best way is the breaching of the hedge, and ask the spirits to receive the vital essence inherent within the compost and transfer it to the unseen, while the physical remains become food for other communities of life. A sacred ritual. Part of the ancient harmonies, the perennial tradition. I am mindful of my childhood, when I could not openly practice witchcraft or seek pagan ways, and was indeed punished for my love of it in very violent ways. I learned in seminary, and on Focus on the Family, that we should not eat food given to idols, or we would be considered pagan, and thus fallen ourselves, or to partake of the sacrament in a church of a different denomination, because this is a reminder that the Andedion really do exist, and to do so was to become a heretic, and thus a disciple of the devil. The fairy faith is domestic, and can never be completely erased by those whom would see anything other than their God triumphant. So, begin with that. Say a little prayer, asking that the spirits accept these sacrifices, then partaking of it, and giving the rest over to them. That is one thing that the Christians did get right, but for the wrong reasons. To say a prayer over one's meal. But instead of offering to their political and social God, give to the spirits of that which you have taken from. And when you gift to your compost pile, say another for the land spirits, which interact with you daily. I open up all my ritual sacrifices with the phrases, Andedion, way do me. I invoke them so that they bear witness that I am keeping my covenant to them. I perform regular rituals, which include the practice of breaching, which include asking in petitions for blessings, for help, not just for myself, but for all my clients and patrons. And so, when we do what we consider mundane things, let us be mindful that our everyday interactions with other than human, formerly human, and currently human in other communities of life have effects that we may not see, that we may not fully comprehend, but that which is around us sees what we do and is made more real by what we do. And that, my friends, is my understanding of what we mean when we use the word faith. We have faith through knowledge that what we do has a fateful return. Now, if we are being beneficent to ourselves, the entities, the Andedion within us, such as your cells, your blood, your bone, all those things that make you physically here, each of those have a personhood to them. And so when we take vitality, we are feeding them, not just ourselves as a whole. For we are very much like Gwyneth. We are very much like Guinevere, in that the host of spirits also lies within us. And that is the idea of the multiplicity of souls. That these entities do their thing and give us life. And so when we take care of ourselves, we are giving them vitality that we may continue. And it's the same thing when we interact with our pets. We want to give them good food, make sure that they are healthy and strong. And so we give vitality to them. And then it's the cells in their bodies that keep them alive, that we are feeding. The same goes from microcosm to macrocosm. And that is my understanding of the Hermetic phrase of as above, so below, as within, so without. Is that exchange of energy, of substance, of vitality is interconnected. And so, who are the Andedion? They are honestly, in my understanding, those entities which have either at one point became cultic spirits, archetypes held within the folklore and mentality of the people in which they interacted with, or they have been, those stories have been manipulated as mankind is wont to do to achieve some sort of goal. So the Andedion, the fairy, the spirits which saturate this world, is everything that's around us with its own personhood. And in fact, it could be seen that even we ourselves, our wandering souls, so to speak, are indeed fairy themselves. And so maybe in the end, all that truly exists are the fairy, are the Andedion. And that's because the ancient fairy faith, as I practice it, is a very animistic practice, a very animistic life way. And it builds a mutual respect with how I interact with people online, with the land around me, my own family, and with my friends and allies that I may not physically be able to touch, to hold, to hear or smell or taste. But I can sense them in a way that most people do not understand in our materialistic world. And so that is my understanding of the Andedion. They literally are, period. They have been, they are, and they will be. Even if we completely destroy this beautiful planet to dust, still they dwell in the unseen. And it is through the force of Gwyn, the wind indweller. It is through the four fundamental powers of Ura, water, Lura, earth, Asaya, air, and, of course, Suta, fire, that those interactions of fundamental entities creates the physical world. And it is in those patterns, starting with water, to earth, to air, to fire, and their interactions that give us this beautiful world in our bodies and our spirits, our fairy selves, physical form. And so, because of that, it's important that we be mindful of how we treat the physical manifestations of our source. And that, honestly, is all I have when it comes to the understanding of the Andedion in simplistic form. Because I could go on and on and on, providing mythological proofs behind this. And at some point, I will be definitely going more in depth. But that's what I got. Now, if you like what I have to present, A Dragon Voice Ministries is sponsored by my Patreon patrons, people just like you. If you wish to give to this ministry, you can gain more information over at www.ruandehayden.com. and I have access to all my social media over on that website. If you wish to give single donations, you can PayPal me. Yes, I do use my dead name in the email address. That is Rev Adam, the letter J, Hayden at gmail.com. You can cash at me at that beautiful money sign, Ruan D. Hayden. But I also want to announce that if you wish to have your own business advertised here on A Dragon's Voice, you can reach out to me and I will provide airtime for your business. And speaking of business, I have a really good friend, a fellow member of the ancient fairy faith of the Kilkine Caro Gwyn, and Iluned runs a beautiful, awesome business of many different subscription boxes and amazing products. And you can find her stuff over at www.patreon.com/poison thicket. Just let her know that Ruan sent you her way. And with that, I have nothing else to say. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, you can message me here on YouTube. You can find me on Facebook, Ruan D. Hayden. And of course, you can find all that stuff at my website at ruandhayden.com. And so, with that, my friends, may you never hunger, may you never thirst, and may the good neighbors always bless you. So mote